Good evening. Take a look at this monster. This is Simon Levy. Today, he was sentenced to a whole life order for the murder of 2 women and the rape of a 3rd woman, whilst he was on bail for other offences. Now, here are all the failures by police, the legal system and the courts that allowed him to brutally kill and rape multiple women. He first came to the attention of the Met in 2017, when a woman reported him for sexually assaulting her at an event in South London. The CPS ruled out charging him, and that decision is now viewed as a mistake. Yeah. In 2018, he sexually assaulted 2 women at public events in London. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison for those offences in 2021, so it took them a while, didn't it? Now, Levy had put his hand down the 2 women's trousers or shorts, with one of the offences resulting in a charge of assault by penetration. Despite describing the offences as extremely serious, the judge in that case, Judge Christopher Hehere, refused to impose a sexual harm prevention order on Levy, which would have placed limits on the sex offender's activity upon release. Interestingly, police and prosecutors did not bother to challenge that decision. The Met Police were then supposed to be monitoring him, and that monitoring failed. In 2022, he sexually assaulted a female police officer whilst in prison. Yes, he groped her. The incident was caught on CCTV, and she reported it to the police on the same day. But police didn't even question him about this until 5 months after he was released from prison. In 2023, he was then released on licence. He was classed as a high-risk sex offender. He was returned to prison to finish his 3-year sentence for his sex offending after being accused of rape and therefore breaking his licence conditions. But he was not charged with any further offence then, which meant that he was actually released for good. The Met Police then became solely responsible for risk managing Levy. But did they do that? No, they immediately downgraded him from being a high-risk sex offender to a medium-risk one. He then just carried on sexually assaulting women, preying on women on trains and on the London Underground. He was granted bail by the courts. He twice failed to appear in court, but no rearrest warrants were successfully executed for him, so again, he was just free to prowl. Then in January 2025, he violently assaulted, suffocated and raped a 35-year-old woman in a car park off Tottenham High Road, leaving her unconscious with a broken collarbone. He was not caught by police. Then, in March 2025, he murdered Carmenza Valencia Trujillo, who suffocated during that sexual encounter in a derelict stairwell on the Aylesbury estate in South London. Now, he was actually arrested as a suspect in April of that year.
Yeah.
Simon! You right, sir? Show me your hands, second. Show me your hands.
Well,
Right, Simon. Okay, you're under arrest on suspicion of murder, okay? Do not have to say anything. It may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
But he was then released on bail due to a reported lack of immediate charging evidence. Between April and May 2025, he carried out 6 more sexual assaults against women on the London Underground whilst he was on bail. Then in August 2025, he murdered Cheryl Wilkins via suffocation in the exact same Tottenham car park where the January rape took place. He was arrested for that.
On Sunday the 24th of August 2025 at B&M car park, High Road N17. I believe you're responsible for the murder of Cheryl Wilkins, okay? So you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you don't mention in question something which later rely in court. Anything you say may be given in evidence, okay?
You right?
At the home where he lived with his mother, a computer was found full of notes about his favourite sex positions, his sex records, as well as plastic bags stuffed with old newspaper articles about sexual abuse, rape and murder. Now, today's verdict means that he will die in prison, but he should never have been allowed to rape or kill at all, should he? Here is what the, in my view, incompetent head of the Met Police, Mark Rowley, said earlier. Now, bear in mind that his force was supposed to be monitoring this monster.
The Met have done better. Yes, we could, and we've already apologised for our part in this. But this is about a whole system failing. The most concerning aspect for me is the fact that he had been caught, he had been charged with offences. He was repeatedly by the police put before the courts, seeking remanding in custody. The police were saying this guy's too dangerous to be on the streets, and between CPS and the courts, they kept bailing him.
But 2 women died here. I'm a bit worried that you're sort of saying it's the criminal justice system that was at fault. But I mean, you knew who he was. You knew his DNA was at the scene of the first murder.
Not to say that we've got it perfectly right. We haven't. There's things we could have done better, definitely. But you can't just put all the risk into communities, not take dangerous people into prison when there's a strong case to do so, and then say to the police, you just carry all that risk and we'll blame you when it goes wrong.
Mark Rowley, 2 women died. Countless others had their lives ruined. And he says that. He just doesn't get it, does he? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. We've got Director of Public Services Mark Littlewood, the Editorial Director at Guido Fawkes, Adam Cherry, and broadcaster and journalist Nina Mishkov. Yeah, Mark, I'll start with you. I mean, the list of failures there across the board is staggering, isn't it?
Oh, the litany of incompetence is absolutely unbelievable. I'm not going to stand up for the head of the Met, but I think that the failure extends from the police to our justice system. The key thing is this: how many careers have been terminated? How many people have lost their jobs as a consequence of this? I think the answer is naught. There are presently, I think, there's some internal police inquiry into some of the police officers involved in that. I mean, I would have thought you could close that in about 5 minutes flat. I can't believe that inquiry should take very long. And classic Rowley there, blame the system. We have now spread responsibility so thinly in the public sector that nobody takes responsibility for something going wrong. Maybe it goes all the way up to the head of the Met, but I would have thought there should be dozens of people who should lose their jobs over this.
I think if he's happy enough to every morning put his little uniform on, you know, polish off all his little medals and those little chains that he's got there and, you know, walk around, I'm the head of the Met, I'm the head of the Met. And then when something as awful as this goes on, oh, it's the system, it's the system. Well, you know, at what point does he front up and maybe take some of those medals off, actually, and resign?
Yeah, I mean, well, Patrick, we talked about this on your show just a few days ago. My view of the Met is it's not just at the top. I mean, Mark Rowley's predecessor, Cressida Dick, resigned in disgrace as well. What are they good for? Yes, OK, the CPS, you know, the CPS, judiciary, these victims and their families were let down by lots of people, and their heads should roll over this. But I think I take a very, very, very dim view of the Met in particular. I think it gets so much wrong, and we're on sofas like this, you're talking about stories like this, all the time. It happens far too often. And I know, of course, there are people within the Met. If I get robbed tonight, who am I going to call? I have to call the police, and the Metropolitan Police are going to respond.
I think the individual police officers are...
Absolutely.
A lot of them are very, very, very
Definitely.
good. And I feel sorry for them that
they're being let down.
That they've got this numpty.
Yeah, not just him. You know, Mark, I totally agree. There need to be not just one resignation. There needs to be several.
I feel sorry for... I'll come to you in a second. I do want to make this clear. I do feel sorry for your kind of... You know, your rank and file police officer. I have the pleasure of meeting several of them when I'm out and about. Yeah. Because they have to be made to sit through all of this ridiculous diversity and equality rubbish, and then if they dare to say, oh, I didn't really like that, they risk being fired. Then you look at your big boss there, someone like Mark Rowley, and you think, well, he's not exactly a particularly inspiring chap, is he, in a lot of respects? And, you know, he gets a lot of things wrong. I feel very, very sorry. And then, also, if they do their job, they don't get backed a lot of the time, do they? They end up in court for stuff. I mean, it's ludicrous. But, look, I mean, you know, there is a catalogue of failures there. But, I mean, Mark Rowley's response there, Nina, to that, I don't know, what do you make of it? I mean, women have died and been raped here, for goodness sake, and sexually.
But women have died, they've been let down. And this comes back to misogyny in many cases, because, like the victims of the grooming gangs, the women are not being taken seriously. There are so many sexual attacks on our tube system. In any week, 3 women are killed by men in this country. It's disgraceful. And so... There is still, and I know there are individual officers who are terrific, and generally they try and do a good job, but there is still misogyny rife within the police force. There was they found that there was a documentary last year, I think it was, which showed that there's still that women are not regarded as human beings.
But in this, there's no evidence in this case that the women were not believed. What makes it even more incredible is that the women were believed. This was all on the record, and nothing was done.
Yes, but
it wasn't a question of saying, "Oh, I reckon she's exaggerating. She'd made it up." It was all believed. You know, cases were prosecuted. He was found guilty, and still he was allowed to go out on the prowl. That's unbelievable.
To be fair on that, then, when he was found guilty of this, because Doug Mark Riley out a bit here, but that isn't all his fault.
No.
This guy was bailed.
Yeah.
He was bailed.
Judge, the CPS, they have questions as well.
That is unforgivable.
No warrant for the arrest when he didn't turn up to court. This is just total incompetence.
But how
these people need to be fired.
How was he
Their careers need to be ended.
Yeah.
How was he let out of prison when he assaulted a female prison officer? How can that be? How can that not be taken into account? And not it is nobody's taking responsibility, and this makes me so angry as a woman. It really, really does, because this is a tip of the iceberg. You would think after Sarah Everard that things would change, and they haven't changed, and it's just disgraceful.
But we basically indulge in competence in the public sector. Nobody ever gets fired. The system is to blame. We're told lessons will be learnt. If you indulge in competence, you will get incompetence. And that is exactly what's happening at the Met Police.
The other thing that stands out for me here is, like, right, all of this is unspeakably awful, and it's, excuse me, it doesn't really get much worse than this. But are there cases we don't know about?
Yeah,
Yes, of course, because women don't care.
And this is it. When I read articles by people like Fraser Nelson, who come out and go, well, crime's at its lowest, there's never been safer, actually, and you think, OK, well, how many people like this guy are there right now wandering around? When my wife gets on the London Underground on her own, is she going to come face-to-face with a Simon Levy, and then the worst thing possible happens, and then you have to find out in court that this guy was in police custody 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, bailed, let out. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking to me, because when they do catch rapists, fewer than 3% of them come to court. And this is why?
Oh, because it's right. There are some reasons for that. It is a difficult crime to prove. There is rarely any public evidence of it. So it's therefore sometimes comes down to a he said, she said. It's not like prosecuting an armed robbery where you've got hundreds of hours of closed-circuit television footage. It is a very, very different...
Yes, but not 97% of cases, not 90% of cases.
Well, it is. It is a lot harder to prosecute. We might want to do better on that.
But not in this way.
But more generally, I mean, this, as I say, this is just completely unacceptable, and it is absolutely ridiculous that dozens of people have not had their careers ended for this.
Has the mayor said anything about this? What's the government response?
Yes, I think he has. He's made some statement.
Well, good.
But there's no remedies being put forward.
That's my point.
No, yes,
right?
exactly.
Where do we go from there?
They always say lessons will be learned so this never happens again. What lessons have been learned?
Yeah, well, the lesson is you need to fire the people who are incompetent. That's the lesson you need to learn.
Who are they? Name them and shame them. Get rid of them.
And humiliate them and end their careers.
Because the thing is, there's a wider point here about public safety. So you looked at the catalogue of chances that there were to have stopped Axel Ruda-Cabana, for example. I can think of loads of other cases. Valdo Calacane in Nottingham. This guy as well. And you just think, we are not being kept safe, are we? Correct. We are not.
Yeah. I mean, again, we spoke about this recently. This is the worst example. There are, even to not trivialise it, but take petty crime, the Met's terrible at handling that as well. Across the board, I see so many cases. People don't even ring up the police half the time now. What's the point? They're not going to solve anything.
And we're asked to believe that crime is falling. So I'm trying to square that off with why the prisons are full. Then.
Well, quite. But again, if you'd searched his room, Nina, and this is another thing. This to me, at face value, would seem like basic police work. And some police officers watching this now might be shouting at their TV screens, going, "Patrick, what are you on about? You've never served a day as a police officer." Fine, I hold my hands up to that.
Yeah.
I'm only commenting on what I've read about this case. Apparently, in his bedroom, which we saw in a video, which was a squalid little room was basically a bin bag full of clippings of articles about rape, murder and sexual assault. So they obviously
if they'd done their job, and the awful thing, living with his mother. Well, that's not going to be.
Well,
she's going to be protecting him. But I mean, I read something that they said that one of the reasons that that they looked more lenient on him was because he'd been blinded in one eye, and they said he couldn't see. I mean. If he'd been castrated, that would have been. Do you know what I mean?
Whoever made the decision to lower his level of risk because he was blinded in one eye needs to be fired. Not after a 4-year investigation. Now. We need to name that public servant, and their career needs to end. If you do not punish this completely cataclysmic level of incompetence and idleness and not doing the job, we will continue to get it. Sack them.
Because there are consequences for all of us. There's consequences for me if I get something very badly wrong here. You know, that could be a sacking, or it could be I find myself in court, defamation, whatever it is, all of these things that can happen. Women died here. Like, women died. And there doesn't appear to be any rush for anyone to lose their job.
Yes, but I think partially that they didn't take it as seriously because the 2 women who died were sex workers, and I think there's a kind of.
So you agree with me? Fire them.
Yeah, of course. Yes, absolutely.
Not only that. I think we need to reinvestigate the definition of the crime of criminal negligence. So I don't just think this is career-ending. I think people should potentially get a criminal record for the negligence that has been shown. It has directly led to the horrific death of 2 women. And I'm afraid that shouldn't just be you're out of your job. That should be that you're in the dock.
But we need to have a society where women are treated equally as men, and women are not. Women are not, and it is just shameful that our society has not evolved to that stage where we got beyond treating sex workers as lesser women.
All right, OK. Now, Lisa Ramsaran, who is the Chief Crown Prosecutor for the CPS, who are, again, very much in the firing line here, said our actions fell short of the standards that victims' families and the public are entitled to expect. We recognise our responsibility and we are sorry for the shortcomings we've identified. British Transport Police Assistant Chief Constable Charlie Doyle said, we understand that Levy's actions will have a lifelong impact on his victims and acknowledge that our initial investigation was not carried out at a fast enough pace. It is clear that opportunities to expedite the investigation were missed, and we've amended our procedures to address these issues to ensure that repeat offenders are dealt with expeditiously and that linked offences are prioritised more effectively. Well, there you go.